What is natural law, and is it the same thing as natural rights? On the previous episode, we explored scenarios in which a misunderstanding of natural rights produces results in a society that are nonsensical and unjust. But let's try to understand what natural law is really, and then we'll see where natural rights fit into it. So it starts, at least in writing, with Plato. One of his works is called The Laws. And it's a conversation between three people, an Athenian, a Spartan, and a Cretan. Cretan with an A, not with an I. It's a fascinating conversation with a multiplicity of topics, but one of the underlying questions is which civilization has the better laws? For example, the Spartan and the Cretan tell the Athenian that their laws focus on how to make the citizens better soldiers, emphasizing courage. The Athenian, though, makes the case that the Athenian laws are better because they focus on all of the virtues of human beings and not just one of them. Right off the bat, there are two questions for us to think about. First, the question of virtue. So it looks like they're assuming that the purpose of the law is the virtue of the human being. So that's something to be explored. But the more fundamental question is, again, they're debating which laws are better. What does better mean? How are they going to find a framework in which they can say that the laws of one city are better than another? And this is precisely where we get the idea of natural law. Listen to this carefully, y'all. When it comes to this question, our worldview must fork one way or the other. When we see the way that different societies have different laws, I mean to the extent that they do, because, it turns out that we tend to have pretty similar laws. To the extent that societies have different laws, we can say, that's just because it's subjective. What's just and unjust in one city is different in another one. Civilizations can decide for themselves what's right or wrong. This was, of course, the position of Stephen Douglas on the matter of slavery. He was for popular sovereignty, let each state decide whether slavery is right or wrong. That's like democracy in action, right? But we see right away the problem with that. So anyway, we can take that perspective when we see the diversity of laws that, it's just relative, okay? Or we can say, B, gee, look at all the different laws in the world. I wonder which ones are actually right. I wonder which ones are right by nature. If you believe that there is such a thing as true justice based on a real right and wrong, then you believe that there is a natural law. If you believe that right and wrong are artificial creations that people and societies make, then you don't. So think of it this way. We might call natural law simply true justice. We can use those terms interchangeably. Natural law, true justice. It's the same idea. And so we just have to be clear on that distinction, first of all. If we're trying to understand what natural law is, it means that we're trying to figure out if there is, first of all, a right and wrong that exist like just outside of the creation of a human being. Okay, are they in fact true things that we can figure out in the universe? By the way, guys, thank you for joining me today. I'm Jim Horan, the Worldview Bro, and if you find this discussion interesting, please help me with the YouTube algorithm by hitting the like button, sharing this video with your friends who maybe like philosophy and culture and things like that. And also, please comment below with any comments or questions about this topic. I really want it to be a conversation, so I look forward to looking at your comments. So we're doing a quick overview of the question of natural law and natural rights. So like I said, Plato's dialogues, especially the Laws and the Republic, introduced this question. And it's actually a big deal because it was very typical in the ancient past to not really question the validity of the laws of a city. As far as a typical citizen knew, the laws were made by the gods, and you just don't question them. Plato, as one of the founders of classical philosophy, isn't satisfied by this dumb kind of obedience, okay? He examines the laws of his society, and he wonders, I wonder, are these laws just in truth? Okay, but how do we know that? If the natural law simply means the laws that are true in and of themselves and not just because a society uses them, then where do we find them? What is natural law? Well, this is where Aristotle and then years later Thomas Aquinas come in. And of course, it's a big tradition, but these are some of the major proponents. So Aquinas and Aristotle, they flesh out a lot better than Plato does what we should be looking for when we look for natural law, true justice. Let me go with Aquinas first, actually. So here's a guy who loves being systematic and being crystal clear. So Aquinas tells us exactly what natural law is and where it is. So in the big picture, it falls under God's overall sovereignty. Obviously, Aquinas' perspective, mine too, is that the universe was created by God, and he sovereignly rules it. So natural law is given to us by God to know how we ought to live. And Aquinas believes, just like it's written in the Bible, that the natural law is in fact written in our hearts. That's where the natural law is. Like, spoiler alert, we already know it. We already know the natural law. We just have to think about it. Yes, it can be clouded by sin, and very often we don't follow it, but we do know it. And of course, we have to think about it because that's what human beings do. See, look, every creature is ruled by natural law. It's just that with us, it's more complicated. What do rabbits do, for example, to live well? I mean, they just follow their inclinations. Do baby rabbits need to be taught? Sure, the parents teach by example. And look, as long as no one interferes with them, like in a disproportionate way in nature, okay, rabbits are going to live their full rabbit lives, okay? They will fulfill their virtue. The natural law is fully instinctual with them. Same thing with bees. You know, bees don't get depressed because they don't know how to live. They fully know how to live. They don't even need to think about it. Rabbits are ruled by their inclination, and they don't have to think about it. Bees follow their inclinations, and they don't even have to think about it. So humans should also follow their inclinations, but we do have to think about it because we're not rabbits, we're not bees, we're human, and humans think. And so in a nutshell, this is what Aquinas says the natural law is. It's to follow our natural inclinations in accordance with right reason. And then Aquinas explains that there are 5 principal natural inclinations for human beings. And so first we have the good, meaning that we're inclined by what is actually good in nature. Okay? Second, self-preservation. We have a natural inclination to preserve our lives. We share this inclination, of course, with all the other animals. Third, we have sexual union and the upbringing of children. Fourth, we have seeking of the truth. And no matter who we are or where we are in our lives, we have a natural desire for truth about things. And finally, we have the inclination to live in community with others. So natural law simply means the right way to live so that we flourish in all of these aspects. Now, I mean, guys, tell me if he's wrong with this list. I mean, would you call your life a good, flourishing life if you, 1, are kept alive? Okay, well, that's a no-brainer. Okay, 2, if your sexual union is the best that it can be. Okay, maybe that's TMI. Okay, more broadly, if your family life is everything that you hope for. Number 3, if you're doing an awesome job figuring out the truth about things. And importantly, this is ultimately fulfilled as we learn more and more about God. But yes, it includes knowing things about the universe in general. I mean, you guys know how amazing it is to learn things that are true, right? To learn the truth about things. It's one of the most fulfilling things in life. Number 4, if you're doing an amazing job with the rest of society, if you have friends and parties and you're going to football games and you're going to book clubs and you have peace with your neighbors and you have peace with other states and you have peace with other countries, okay? And 5, if you are able to pursue everything that is good and enjoy everything that is good. Okay, and so actually this one out of all the 5 inclinations actually points to the fact that we don't actually have true fulfillment until we are in the presence of God, okay? But that's another show. Still, I want you to look at that list and tell me if you could have come up with a better list as to how to live or what you're looking for when you're looking for a flourishing, full, and beautiful life. And so if we apply the natural law perfectly, that's precisely what we would have. We would have a perfect life. Now, of course, applying the natural law is the tricky part. But I don't want us to miss the important thing here. Listen to this carefully. If we agree that this is a good list, then we should realize that there really is a natural law because we can easily identify right from wrong. We can identify good from evil. Okay, modern philosophers talk about these things like it's a really complicated deal, when really it's not. Okay, really, most of what we do with classical philosophy is to undo all the stupid knots and just nonsense that a lot of modern philosophy has become. Okay, good is everything that promotes those 5 things. Evil is everything that hampers those 5 things. Oh, hey, it's against the law in my country to murder someone. Good. That's a just law because it's in accordance with the natural law. And by the way, pretty much every civilization has laws against murder. Sure, we find some variation in laws from civilization to civilization, but that variation is often made too much of. We should actually wonder why it is that so many different civilizations have laws that are so similar. Well, it's because whether we like it or not, we do have a sense of the natural law, and we tend to try to apply it in the best way. Now, this is where Aristotle gives us a little bit of wisdom as well. Yes, Aquinas does a great job explaining what the natural law is based on, that it's a set of general principles. But remember that natural law also means that we pursue those principles with right reason. And this means that the natural law is not just a strict set of rules. It's actually very appropriate for different civilizations to have different traditions and laws that differ in certain ways. But at the end of the day, we can still judge those laws on the basis of whether they're effective in promoting those 5 natural inclinations or not. And so, for example, like we see where it can get more complicated. I don't mean to pick like a contentious example, but it's actually a pretty relevant example here. So let's take, for example, let's say that we have a lockdown law, right? So, we have this very dangerous virus. So, the Congress passes a law that we have to lock down in place, that we can't go to our jobs, et cetera, like the way the lockdowns worked out, at least when there were the strict lockdowns. Look, off the bat, you can say, maybe that law has a lot of plausibility. Hey, of course, that's in accordance with natural law because what they're trying to do is to preserve life. Hey, it's in accordance with natural law then. Well, it could be. I mean, it does pass the first plausibility test, right? I mean, you can see that the end is in accordance with natural law, but it can still violate natural law if it's not a reasonable thing to do. It could be that it still fails the reason test of natural law because it could be that it doesn't fulfill the end appropriately. It could be sometimes that by trying to preserve life, maybe sometimes you end up taking more life. Because you can make the case that if you're in a lockdown, you're probably going to diminish your immunity to other things. You might be more susceptible to other diseases. Maybe you end up not getting that cancer screening, that you would have had if you didn't have the lockdown. So there are there are a lot of moving parts where reason needs to come in. And look, I'm not even commenting on that right now. I'm just saying that you have to look at, I'm just saying that it can be complicated how you apply the natural law when you're making human law. I'm just saying that it's not an easy thing to do, to apply that natural law. And that's where the virtue of prudence that Aristotle talks about comes in. That's actually like one of the key virtues of human beings, that we have that capacity to, yes, understand principles, but to then take the particulars in the moment and see the best way that we can attain those principles. That's the use of right reason. And so this aspect of the natural law, we learn a lot from Aristotle by reading the Politics and the Nicomachean Ethics. Now listen, guys, I'm going to have to address the distinction between natural law and natural rights on the next episode. I just want to finish today by emphasizing 3 important things we learned from Plato and Aristotle and Aquinas. One is that it is certainly possible and appropriate that we examine the laws of our nation, of our state, of our city, and that we judge whether they are good or not. Laws are not just random mandates from people in power, or they ought not to be. Okay, when we're fighting for our laws to be truly just, what we are doing is we are seeking out the natural law and demanding that our human law adhere to the natural law. Okay, laws that are against the natural law are simply unjust laws. And that puts us in a difficult position of how to go from there. Unlike what thinkers like Kant might say, Aquinas will be the first to tell you, if you disobey a law that is contrary to the natural law, you are not in the wrong. Okay, now you should probably make damn certain that you're right, okay, but still. Second, the natural law isn't some rigorous thing that's taking all your fun away. Okay, the natural law is simply trying to give you your best life now, okay? It's for the sake of the flourishing and fulfillment of all human beings. Okay, and thirdly, the natural law, like we learned from Aristotle, can't be a rigid set of rules, but it is certainly a clear set of principles. We mustn't let the variety of approaches to fulfill natural law give us the wrong impression like it did to the Spartan and the Cretan, that diversity of human laws means that justice is simply the whim of whoever is in power. Now, if you think about it, that's actually a position that a lot of modern philosophy has. Well, there's a lot more to cover in this conversation, my friends, but we're going to leave it here for now. I'm hoping that this at least gives us a good introduction to the natural law. Obviously, the recommended reading would be Plato's Laws and the Republic, Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics and the Politics, and Aquinas' Summa Theologiae. So anyway, thank you, everybody. Let me know your comments and your questions below, and I'll see you on the next time.